the Ruger SFAR in 308. Let's check it out. The AR-15 is a handy, lightweight rifle. It comes in 5.56 or 223, and it's one of those kind of intermediate calibers that'll get out to about 600 yards. And it's been used by the U.S. military for decades, all the way from Vietnam all the way up. And it's just one of those staple rifles. It's used all over the world. When it comes to 308, that is a more substantial caliber. It has greater ballistics, greater range, heavier bullet, but it requires a heavier rifle. And the AR-10 has typically been the 308 version of your AR-15 style rifle. Ruger has just introduced their SFAR, and this is for small frame auto-loading rifle. It is honestly about the same size as your standard AR-15. Obviously, the mag well is enlarged to accept the larger magazines, but overall, this is a really lightweight, handy 308 rifle. And so we're going to take a look at a lot of the features. This is a brand new release from Ruger, and really for 308, it shoots extremely well. And 308 definitely has more recoil than your 5.56, but the way this rifle is set up and this boomer muzzle brake, it really tames the recoil. Makes this a very pleasurable gun to take to the range. And it gives you extended ballistics. So Ruger got in touch and asked if I'd be willing to check out the SFAR, and when it comes to a really unique rifle setup, I'm definitely ready for it. Now the SFAR, or the small framed auto-loading rifle, it's definitely a go-between between the large AR-10 and your standard AR-15. But Ruger's put together a really beautiful rifle, and we're going to get into some of the details. I'm going to compare it with an AR-10, with an AR-15, and just give you a really good size comparison between the two. Guys, I've shot a lot of lightweight AR-10s in 308, and this is definitely the lightest, the smallest that I've ever had any experience with. Let's go ahead and make sure the gun's unloaded. We're going to drop our 20-round magazine. It's one of the P-Mags from Magpul, and it does come with the rifle. Then pull back on a charging handle, and it's empty. Now when you have your AR-15 magazine, it's a lot smaller than your standard 308 magazine. So, it's definitely going to have that larger mag well, and that is part of the rifle. But then it changes, and when it gets down to here, it's about the same size as your standard AR-15 rifle, the upper receiver, the lower receiver, then it just expands out. Now here you can see the other side, and this really gives you a better look of an AR-15 style. I mean, it is really thin, except again for the mag well, but everything else is very AR-15 size. Now with the charging handle, it's fairly small, but one of the problems is, especially with the scope, is that this can be a little difficult to pull back, especially with that heavier spring. For me, I'd like to see an extended charging handle to be able to get that out there really easily, but that is so easy to remedy. I mean, there's so many different choices of charging handles out there on the market. But that is one thing that I didn't really care for on this rifle. And here on the back plate of the receiver, there is a QD port here as well. Now the handguard is from Ruger. It is one of their light free float handguards, and it has M-LOK all the way down. It is a 15-inch handguard. It is ultra light. It is ultra thin. This is very reminiscent of your AR-15. A lot of times with the AR-10s, it has a much thicker handguard to accommodate a larger barrel. Yet this one has an H-bar barrel and still retains that really thinness. Then we have the two-part boomer brake. This is a really effective muzzle brake. You have your two ports, It definitely puts out some concussion on either side, but it really tames the recoil. 5/8 by 24-inch threads, so any of your suppressors, other type muzzle brakes will fit on this rifle. Now you do have a QD port at the end of your handguard, and then you have a small Picatinny rail for your front sight. Now the barrel is 4140 chrome moly steel. It is black nitrided, and it is more of your H-bar type barrel. It's a pretty thick barrel, but even so, it's definitely much lighter than your AR-10 rifle. It has the 5R rifling, which is going to give it really good accuracy. And we have a regulated gas port. This has 3 settings. It's really easy to change out. It comes with a tool, but you can change it with about anything you can slip in there. Even has a cut here on the handguard. But it comes on setting 3, which is your initial setting, and that's just to fire standard commercial ammo. After you've broken it in a little bit, you want to switch it down to setting 2. And setting 2 will actually give you less recoil. And then for setting 1 is typically set up for suppressors. The lower the setting, the less recoil you're going to have. And again, this is a mid-length gas system. On the 20-inch barrel, it's a full rifle-length gas system. And you can see your M-LOK slots at 3, 6, and 9 o'clock. Now the scope we were using is one of the Primary Arms GLX, and this is a 1:6 by 24. It's a first focal plane scope. It is phenomenal. I love the turrets. It's just an excellent scope, really clear glass, and Primary Arms does a fantastic job with their optics, and yet they come in at a budget price, which belies the value of these scopes. So I highly recommend Primary Arms. But we also have one of the Aero Precision ultralight mounts. Now we have an Aero Precision. This is their M5. It's in 308. It is an AR-10. But one of the things, there's a lot of beefed up area right here. There's a lot of squared areas. It's thicker right in this area as well. You can see that it's pretty thick all the way through. And it makes it a heavier rifle. When you get the Ruger SFAR, look how much thinner this upper receiver is. I mean, it is considerably thinner than the 308 style. And everything is just narrow, which really aids in making this a smaller, lighter rifle. Definitely back here at the receiver, much smaller, more basic. Now when you get to your mag well, of course, again, you've got to have that larger mag well. But even then, they've got it really trimmed down to make it as light and small as possible. With the standard AR-10 style, this whole area is just a lot larger. And really, traditionally it's needed to be, because the 308 has a lot more pressure to it. Ballistically, it's a lot more powerful round. But with the SFAR, they've just really put a lot of thought into trimming this down as much as possible. The weight on the SFAR runs 6 pounds 13 ounces without the scope. With the Aero Precision M5E1, it's running 8.5 pounds. That just gives you a really good idea of what Ruger has really put together with this rifle. Now here on the other side of the AR-10, much larger, bigger. This is a much larger upper receiver. And then even this part at the back. I mean, everything is just larger. And again, that is to accommodate 308. But Ruger has figured it out to get this really trim. Whereas this AR-10, again, is bulky and heavier. But I will say that I really love this rifle. It's very well made. In fact, I had a review on this one. It is just a beautiful rifle, shoots really well. But again, you've got a considerable amount of less weight with your Ruger. Then when you come in with your standard AR-15, and this is in 5.56 or 223. I mean, very similar in lines with the receiver. The low receiver is almost identical. There are some things that they've done that these are not interchangeable. But definitely a very small package. Of course, the mag well is definitely a lot different. But even the upper receiver, I mean, they are very close in dimensions and in size. And so that really allows for the SFAR to be a smaller, lighter rifle. Here we have the 308 or 7.62 by 5.1 on the right, and then we have 223 or 5.56 on the left. This is your standard caliber for your AR-15. There's a lot of other calibers, but predominantly 223 or 5.56 is what you see. When it comes to the 308, muzzle energy with a 150 grain bullet compared to a 55 grain bullet is 2,733 feet per second. On the 223, it's 3,189 feet per second. Now, that's more, but you have a much lighter bullet. With the 308, at 500 yards, we have 1,775 feet per second versus 1,515.2 feet per second. So there's a considerable drop in velocity with your 223 at 500 yards. when it comes to muzzle energy, 2,723 foot-pounds, 1,290 foot-pounds with the 5.56. And then at 500 yards, you have 1,109 foot-pounds of pressure with the 223, 289. So you have out to distance a really significant drop with the 223. Again, smaller bullet, and we have a heavier bullet with the 308. Also, 308 holds supersonic speeds over 1,000 yards. When it comes to 223 or 5.56, it's 710 yards supersonic. And once it hits past supersonic, it starts to get unstable. And guys, again, there's a ton of different loads. There's a ton of different velocities that fall into this. This just gives you a general idea. And because of the bullet size, you have a much larger magazine with your 308 comparatively to the 5.56 in that same round capacity. And so much thicker magazine, much thicker mag well, and typically much thicker all the way around. And Ruger has just designed this rifle to just fit more toward this size of the 223 than your standard traditional 308 and AR-10 size. Now, installed is one of Ruger's Elite 452 triggers. They purport a 4.5 pound trigger pull. So we have some take up. It's a short take up. It's not a lot. And that's a really crisp break. Reset right there. Very quick reset. I'm pretty impressed with that trigger. Checking trigger pull weight with our Lyman trigger gauge from Brownells. 3 pounds, 0.6 ounces. 3 pounds, 3.5 ounces. Very light trigger pull, considerably less than what Ruger has stated, but very nice indeed. I want to thank Fiocchi for sponsoring the ammunition, all made in the USA. One of the #1 suppliers of ammunition in the country. And I'll tell you, it's really good shooting, really accurate stuff, but we really do appreciate them sending us ammo to shoot a lot and get this a lot of testing done. Now, one thing about 308 that I really like with the AR-10 is that you have the P-mags that are up to 30 rounds. You have the 10s, the 20s, and then the 30s. So it's the same configuration you get with an AR-15, plus they make drum mags for it. But this really is the same silhouette as your standard AR, and that makes it really nice because the weight is pretty much the same. But yet you have a more capable round. And while you know you're shooting 308, I mean, there's no doubt. Really, that muzzle brake makes a big difference. And then just the feel of it, it's thinner, it's trimmer, everything is trimmed down. I like AR-10s, but they're big compared to the ARs, this AR-15s. This is a lot handier rifle, and the weight is nice. So you may notice a little difference with this than an AR-15, but honestly, there's not a lot compared to the ballistic advantage you're going to get out of the 308. That's nice. Now let's take a look under the hood. This is really tight, so we're going to use just a nylon little punch. Get that started. Pull that right out. And here with a pivot pin, same thing. Really tight. A very lightweight hammer and yet full spring pressure. So it's going to give you very solid ignition, and yet you're going to have that lighter hammer coming down, which is going to aid in this really beautiful trigger system. But you can see the inside, I mean, it is really thin, very similar to the AR-15. Next, we're going to pull out our bolt and our bolt carrier. I mean, I've seen some really large AR-10 bolts. This is trimmed down. It's still larger than your standard AR-15 bolt. It has dual ejectors and a really beefed up extractor. So that's going to give you really positive ejection of your brass. The gas key, it has one grade 8 fastener. That's kind of different. I've not seen that. Usually on the AR-15s they have two. But we have our gas system. Really very thin, much smaller than your standard AR-10 bolt carrier group. Now here we have the Ruger SFAR bolt and bolt carrier, and then we have the standard Air Precision. Look at this thing. It is huge compared to the Ruger. Now this really surprises me, how much larger this is. I guess it really shouldn't, because this definitely adds a lot of the weight to the rifle. And then we have the SFAR standard charging handle. And then here we have the 308. You can see it's a lot longer, it's a lot bigger. And so your standard AR-15 charging handle will work in your SFAR. But man, those are some real significant differences between these two. And with the bolt on the SFAR, they use a high nickel content alloy steel, and it's formulated to really function and to hold strength with this size bolt and bolt carrier. So you're going to get that advanced technology really to make this smaller. Now the MSRP is $1,229, a very reasonable price for an AR-10 style rifle. And again, you have Ruger quality going right behind it. Market price will be less typically, I mean, if you find it in your local gun shops. So I'm suspecting that this will come in about $1,100. And for a 308 with all this technology that's gone into this rifle, I think that is a great price. Guys, I'll be honest, I haven't been surprised with an AR-15 style or AR-10 rifle in a while. I mean, there are some differences, there's definitely some advantages to different ones. But this really bridges the gap between the AR-15 and the AR-10. I mean, it is surprising, and I think a lot of it has to do with the bolt carrier and the bolt that they're putting in these. And then, of course, the reduced upper and lower receiver. As far as longevity, you know, we'll have to see. I mean, again, these have just come out. Once people really get these out in the field and put thousands of rounds through them, we'll see how well that reduced size bolt hold up. But overall, right now, I mean, I am impressed. I mean, you can just color me impressed with this one. It's just really surprising. This is truly a breakthrough when it comes to the AR-15, AR-10 style rifle. It's a cross between the two. It gives you that smaller rifle, lightweight, easier to maneuver, and yet it gives you that 308 power and the ballistics. And from going from 600 yards max with a 5.56, you can get out to 1,000 plus with a 308. And plus it makes a really excellent hunting option. And then when you're out in the field, it's very lightweight. So the new Ruger SFAR, I mean, this is a breakthrough with your AR type style rifles, and it gives you that hybrid between 308 and 5.56, leaning heavily toward the AR-15 style rifle. And again, we want to thank Ruger for sending the SFAR 308 for this review and giving us a little bit of an experience with this cool hybrid design. Rubber Dummies is one of the best training tools on the market, and you get a 10% discount using Suit00 when you click the link down in the description. Be strong, be of good courage. God bless America. Long live the Republic. Some of the #1 supply, okay. One of the largest suppliers, crap, okay, what the crap. Let's do that over again. It's 13 ounces. Well, that was heavy. The SFAR. I don't know why that reminds me of Lion King. Mufasa. Mufasa.